This drone looks so good, I can almost guarantee that it's going to be sold out by the time you guys are watching this video, and it came so close to being my drone pick of the year. Stay tuned to find out why. G'day, Stu here from UAVfutures, and today, well, I really do have something special, something I'm super excited about actually, and I'm going to say go check that link in the description because I'm pretty sure after watching this thing is going to be sold out or on back order for a while. What this is the Furibee Fire Dancer, and honestly, if you're new to FPV drone racing, let me just tell you that on paper, this thing looks absolutely insane, better than any drone I've ever seen before in terms of the specs, and especially considering the price. I think it's like $160 or $170. And the other thing too, if you've been around in this hobby for a while and you can tell that I absolutely love these racing drones, let me rattle off a few specs, like a Transtech Lightning frame, 2306 size motors, 2 to 6S capable ESC, fantastic VTX, pagoda antennas, D-shot. Honestly, this thing has features to boot and it looks amazing as well. Like, I'm going to flash a picture on the screen. So what this is the part 1 review of the Transtech Lightning, and I was very close, if I didn't know better, to giving this thing my drone pick of the year, because for the price and the components you get in here, it is absolutely ridiculous. I've never seen something that looks quite so good. So what we're going to do, we're going to stick it on the bench, break it down, have a look at all its components, talk about its pros, its cons, its quality, its design, and all that sort of stuff. And then at the end, stay tuned, I'm going to tell you why it just missed out on being my #1 pick. Anyway, let's stick it on the bench and get started. Oh, almost forgot as well, we've got one of these bad boys to give away, so definitely make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, all that standard sort of jazz. The official rules will be down somewhere in the description, but what you need to do, leave a comment that tells me how much is this in your local currency, because so many people say, Stuart, why do you use US dollars? And pretty much I want to know how much is it in your local currency. So drop that comment down below. You don't even have to pay shipping. It's going to get shipped straight to you. So somebody out there in about a week's time will be picking a winner. Is going to be winning one of these fire dancers. But enough rambling. I'm excited. Let's stick it on the bench and get started. Alrighty, so here it is on the bench, and finally a drone look I can pronounce, the Fire Dancer from Furibee. And let's just take a minute to take it in. Look how beautiful this drone looks. I know I say that I've said that about the Chameleon. Some frames just have something about them, especially I seem to like it when they're mixing the aluminium or aluminum with the carbon. This thing, not only is it color matched to boot, it looks absolutely fantastic. You can see that profile, it's going to be slicing through the air, or that's the plan anyway. And this thing, look, it's a ready to rock and roll FPV racer. It's got some great stuff in here, which I can't wait to dive in and show you guys. And it can take a 6S battery, so absolutely ridiculous. Honestly, Furibee, I really think they must have someone high up working for them who knows specifically about FPV drone racing, because in the past, these companies, the bind and flies, they can be a bit hit and miss, but this thing, it's about as good as you can get if you're going to build this yourself. It's like someone really, this is like if I was going to build my own drone, the amount of stuff in here is absolutely top notch. Really, really good choice components. Anyway, what we should do, let's jump in a little bit more in the review. One part I do want to point out before we get started though, look, it comes in this box. You don't get much, and that's exactly what I like, because it's an absolute plain cardboard box. And I'm excited about that. Not that this is an unboxing, but it's just cheap. This drone is all the value for money, is exactly what you get in the drone. You only get one spare set of props, and that is it. There's nothing else in the box. It's just a bit of cardboard and foam, and that's what I want, because I don't want to pay money for fancy instructions, fancy colors, nothing like that. All the money in this is in the drone, which is why it's such good value for money. What we should do, let's stick it on the scales, find out how much it's going to weigh. So it's got some massive hefty motors on here as well, which we'll talk about. So it's coming in at 328 grams. So look, it's not the lightest racer, it's definitely not the heaviest, but what it does make up for, the size of the carbon, the size of the motors, and this thing can take a 6S, it should be, that weight is going to mean absolutely nothing. So overall, in terms of the power, the weight to thrust ratio, this thing is off the chain. Now this is the part I'm excited about. We're going to jump in, have a look at the components, because honestly, the things in here, this is why I was so blown away. This is what made me want to give this thing Drone of the Year for the price. And the stuff you get in here is absolutely ridiculous. And we'll go through too at the end why this wasn't my drone pick of the year, because there are some things I would like to change and some things that don't make it perfect. But overall, look, the things in here on first impressions, and if you didn't know better, you'd think, gee, there has to be a catch. How can they make this cheap and that good? All right, I'm going to take this FPV antenna off. We will talk about that in a little bit, but probably the first component I want to talk about, check this out. It's a Transtech Lightning clone. Are you serious? That Transtech Lightning, that's the frame it's in. that's quite an expensive frame, and I can't believe you're getting this in this bind and fly for that really, really cheap price. And probably the exciting part, it's made up of 4 individual arms. These arms are 5mm thick, which is absolutely crazy. It shouldn't be breaking anytime soon. And for anybody out there looking to flash the picture on the screen, I was a massive fan of the Transtech. Mine is still getting built, so I'm doing a bit of a build with that at the moment. But this thing, I can't believe for the price, it's actually included, which is pretty crazy. Now what I will do, we're going to take these props off because props are pretty annoying and it makes the review a little bit harder. But these are just some of the fishbone props. These aren't really my favorite props. I'm probably going to be putting some Dell Cyclones on here after I fly around with these a little bit. It does look nice with the color stuff, but look, props aren't really too much of a biggie. You do get one spare set in the box, and that's the only other thing in there. But you know, everybody I know changes out their props anyway. So let's take those off and then get on with the rest of the review. Alrighty, so that's a bit better. We've taken the props off. Now we're going to get in, jump straight in. We're going to have a look at the motors first, and out of everything, this is probably the one part that I'm a little bit skeptical about. So they've put some crazy powerful motors on here. They might be good on a 5 or a 6S, but they're 23, 06, 2400 kV. So that's a pretty high kV, especially when you're going to put this thing on a 6S battery. But because they're a 23 size motor with a relatively high stator, it should hold up okay. Now I've never heard anything about these motors. They're not branded or anything like that. Look, they're obviously the nice pink color. They've done some matching. But one thing I do want to point out, I'm not sure how the amp draw is going to be, and you know, are they going to be inefficient? And the other part, one of them, when I was taking the props off, you can see right here, all these are pretty tight, except for this one. This one right here, the shaft was a little bit loose, so I had to tighten that up underneath. And we're going to talk about that sort of quality control in a little bit. But yeah, out of everything, these motors, I haven't heard too much about them. We're going to have to see how they go. But that's probably my first part where I think, well, that's one of the reasons why it wasn't drone gear, why this thing wasn't perfect, because everything else on the internals is absolutely amazing. We're going to get this bit out of the way. The FPV antenna you get, it's a Pagoda right here, one of the twos, and I actually like it. They're sort of giving some credit to the people who designed them, because look, this is open source. So I'm fine with that Pagoda antenna, nothing there, no worries at all with the clone antenna or anything like that, because look, they're giving credit where credit's due, and this is an open source antenna. They've put a little bit of extra protection around the top, but I do think in a hard crash, because it's on the top right here, if you come down unluckily upside down, especially if you've got nothing there, this thing, it's probably going to snap, because the Pagoda antennas, in my experience, you get fantastic reception, but they're also just a little bit more fragile. So we'll put that to the side. And then before we take the top off, one of the things here that's a little bit different, you can see, I'll flash a picture on the screen, but we've got this little bit of like, it looks like a bit of extra protection to protect your RP SMA connector right there. But one part to look at, check this out, when you put this on here, so we're going to screw this down, what actually happens, the top of the antenna, you can notice it's still loose like that. That's with it fully tightened down, and that's because I don't think it's making the proper connection, and that reason is, if I take this off, you've got this extra little plate on top here for the frame, and look, that might be for some extra strength, but what you actually need to do, I'm going to recommend to take it off. This thing doesn't come with the original Transtech. Take this thing off. That's going to allow you to screw your antenna down a lot better, make a much more secure connection. So if you're out there, even if you don't have this frame and you're flying around and you find the top of your antenna can still spin around even though when it's fully down, I really don't think you're going to be having the right connection there. So that might be one of the issues where you're getting some video breakup. Anyway, what we should do, let's take the top off right here, have a bit of a more a squiz underneath. Alrighty, so we've taken off our little, I guess, lightning little plate right there. It does look pretty cool. I don't know how much extra strength you need, but it is a pretty robust frame anyway. But you will see we've got our little receiver packed in the top, and Stuart, hang on. That doesn't look like the ones in the pictures, and yes, good sirs and lasses, you would be correct, because this is actually the receiver you get with it. This one, look, it is a FreeSky one, and I had to bind it in D8 mode, but when I first got this, and look, I've done a little bit of a mod, I've put my own XM Plus in here, because these things, full-size proper receivers, this one, as it was in here, the antenna was crammed right in here. That's just asking for some fail-safe. So if you're getting this, or whatever version, look, I'll link a whole bunch of versions down below, whatever version you're going to get, I would say ditch the receiver that comes in this thing and just put in one that you can trust, because some people might have some luck with this, but I found, look, in my experience, you're going to get some fail-safes, and especially because it's packed in here, especially on this little FreeSky one, you're not going to be getting too much range, and the last thing you want is this thing going 100 miles an hour and then getting a fail-safe and it's sort of disappearing. Even if the motors stop, it's still going to be going a long way between when you lose control to when it hits the ground. So yep, I put my own receiver in right here. So that's probably one of the other cons too, why I couldn't give this thing Drone of the Year, because that coupled with these motors that, look, the quality control might be a little bit off, and you will get some fail-safes. That's not really what you want on something you can just take out of the box and rip it around. But however, speaking of that, everything else in here I'm super excited to show you guys. So I'm going to flash some pictures on the screen. We're probably going to start on the bottom. So this is where we've got a 40 burst amp, 35 amp ESC. It can take a huge voltage, so up to a 6S battery, which is absolutely ridiculous. I can't even imagine how fast this thing's going to go. Coupled with some of these heavy torque motors too, it's going to absolutely slice through the air. So that's pretty exciting. It's rocking D-Shot. On top of that, we've got our F4 flight controller. It's rocking a Betaflight OSD, so you're going to be able to have all your voltage, your timer, all that sort of stuff on the screen. And I should say straight off the bat, it has a lot of options turned on. I'm going to be turning a lot of those things off, so that part's a little bit annoying, but it's a very, very easy fix. All you've got to do is simply change it, plug it into your computer, push a few clicks, and then you've just got the perfect OSD. And then on top of that, this is one of the stars of the show for me. We've got a fantastic VTX with changeable power levels. You can see you've got two different buttons right here, and two things I love about this. It doesn't have smart audio, unfortunately, and if it had that, that would be absolutely killer. But we've got a whole bunch, I'll flash some more pictures on the screen if you can't see. We've got a whole bunch of LEDs here. There's also your power level, so on first glance you can see exactly what power, band and channel that you're on. So right there, that's very, very nice. Now one part I do want to point out, for some reason my Fat Shark band on this thing was coming in on the E LED, so I'm not 100% sure what's going on there, but regardless, a pretty cool VTX, and one of the best features about it, we've got this MMCX connector right here. Now if you don't know what that is, that's we're no longer really using too much of these little RP or SMA connectors. What these are just some little connectors. These are my favorite type. This is what I want all VTXs in the future to have. I like the UHFL connectors, but these things are just a little bit more robust and don't weigh too much more, and they fit nice and snug there too. It's a lot harder to break these off, so top quality VTX there in my opinion. Now what I do wish that would make this even better is if you had this and this just came out as a little whip, because that whip antenna is going to be a lot more robust than this. It'll probably save them some money as well, so you'll be able to switch that out if we just had a little whip antenna coming out the back and the kit connected in there with that little connector. That would be A+. And then on the front we've got an FPV camera, so that's attached to the other end of the FPV systems. This is rocking a 2.1 lens, 140-degree field of view, so look, you're going to be seeing a little bit more. And what I do want to mention too, it's also got this great camera protection, so it's going to be very, very hard to break this camera. It's very well protected. Even on a frontal smash you're going to have to get very, very unlucky in order to hit it. Like look, maybe a flag is going to be the only thing that breaks it, but if you're hitting a tree, the ground, rocks, anything like that, things are going to break before your camera. So I'm really happy with the camera protection on this little bad boy. And then finally we've just got some other little components. So we've got a little changeable LED on the back, which is nice. It's already set up, it changes colors, all that sort of stuff when you're flying around. And underneath we've got our Velcro strap. Now this part's a little bit, I guess, dodgy, because it's not really the best Velcro strap that I've seen. I'm not really a big fan of this type, you know. I much prefer the rubber ones so you can really tighten down. Alright, so moving on, let's have a bit of a look at the design, and I'm going to say straight off the bat, I'm a fan. I'm going to say about an 8 out of 10 in terms of design. It's nothing too amazing, but the Transtech Lightning frame, even if this is a clone, I don't even know how they made this thing so cheap, but the frame itself I'm a big fan of. It's great camera protection. These motors, although I will talk about the quality in a little bit, the idea behind that is pretty good, and all the other components in here seem to be top notch, and especially like things designing it around these connectors, all that sort of jazz. It can take a 6S, so I'm a big fan. One of the design things I don't like though is that little part that goes on the back to protect your VTX or so. That part's not going to offer you very, very good, I guess, reception. It's not going to let your antenna screw properly down, and the other part, you know, you're going to get fail safes with your little receiver tucked in there like that. That part's not good. In terms of design, I think they've done their homework. I really think the people over there at Furibee, they're listening to someone who knows what FPV drone racers want. And the crazy part, for the price, that's where I'm kind of confused. I don't understand how they can design and put this drone together for that low cost. Righty, so now let's talk about the quality, and this is where I've got to sort of give it to them, or I mean give it to them in a bad way. This is probably the one part I understand for the cost. You've got to cut corners somewhere, and I think the quality is on this one a little bit questionable. So look, the solder joints and all that sort of stuff, that's fine. I'd probably give the solder joints like a 7 out of 10. I'm not worried about shorts, and it is nice how you get some nice braiding and that sort of stuff. But there are some things that I think they could do, or at least you viewers, if you're going to get one of these, there are some things you need to do. Number one, you need to tighten your frame. So if you're expecting just to get this thing, take it out, rip it around, it needs to be tightened. So you can see it's got a little bit of play here, not too much vertically, like if you're stressing the carbon, but these screws, they're a little bit loose. So make sure sure you tighten that. I don't really like how you've got this cheaper Velcro strap. It wouldn't cost too much to just put a proper one in there. Maybe a little sticky pad too to stop your battery sliding around. That would be a bit better, make it a bit of a better quality frame and quad. On the back here, I don't know how many times I have to say this costs less than 1 cent. Please guys, just zip tie down this, because if you jettison your battery, especially at high speed and maybe with a dodgy strap, it's going to just pull that straight off the board. It's going to be kaput. So that part needs to change. I'm going to be zip tying that down as well. And then the other part that I want to talk about, besides the tune, because look, it felt a little bit unruly. I gave it a little bit of a quick zip in the air. The tune felt a little bit off, so that part's a little bit of a shame. The other part too, in terms of the quality, we're going to talk about the motors. This one right here, the shaft is loose, so I can actually spin that. So I'm not really too much of a fan of these motors. They're untested, and I understand the big size, the concept is there, and especially on a high voltage, but the quality, it can really make a difference in these motors, so I'm not too sure how these ones are going to go. That is probably its biggest downfall in my opinion. Also too, on this frame, I know the original Transtech Lightning, all the outsides of the carbon was chamfered, and even though this thing is pretty thick, this one, it's not chamfered, so it's a lot sharper on the edges. You can tell they've done a bit more of a budget version when they're cutting this thing out. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this back together, then we'll talk about its pros and cons. Alrighty, so I've put it back together. Now let's have a bit of a look at the pros and the cons, and I'm going to do the pros first, the things that I do like. So look, overall the price, absolutely ridiculous, and especially when coupled with the fact of what you actually get, like a Transtech Lightning frame, the concept behind these motors, 5mm thick arms, Tentaka 6S, an MMCX connector in here with your Betaflight OSD, Pagoda antenna. All that stuff is off the chain, absolutely crazy for like the 160, 170, whatever this Fire Dancer is, and I can pronounce the name, that's another plus, but whatever this thing is, it's absolutely ridiculous. Like that is why I almost chose this thing for my drone of the year, because on paper, it looks almost unbeatable. It actually does look unbeatable for what you get for the money. It's just simply insane. But when we come to the cons, and this is the thing that made me change my mind a little bit, because look, we did take it out, give it a little bit of a blip, and definitely stay tuned for that part 2 where we really put it through its paces. But just in the quick little hovers, the tune felt a little bit unruly. The frame's a little bit loose, but look, that's no biggie, and I don't like the Velcro strap, and I do wish they'd put some of those other little things in that we talked about with the quality control, all that sort of jazz. And these motors, this part is probably where I'm a little bit suspicious as well, because they're untested, it's asking a lot for them, and because this one is loose, like that shaft in there, I'm a little bit concerned how it's going to pull up in its flight characteristics, because overall, look, I think they've done a great job, but there's just a few little things that mean if you want to take this thing out of the box, rip it around, you're not going to have the best time, because I do think it needs a little bit of work. It might be perfect for those people who are out there think, gee, I can do that, I can do a little bit of tuning, or I can tighten those things, or change the Velcro strap, that's no biggie. But if you're one of those absolute beginners, and you don't know anything about quads, you're just going to take this out of the box and expect it to go perfect, I don't think that's how this one's going to go. I do think I'm going to be getting it to fly very well. Time will tell, so definitely stay tuned for that part 2. And then the other part 2, look, I'm not sure how the other receiver is going to come, because I got mine as bind and fly, but I would say for the price, it's not really too much of a biggie. Swap this out, because the way this was crammed in here shows to me they're not really thinking of fail safes. They prefer it to look good, and you're going to be getting fail safes with this little bad boy crammed in here next to the components, inside the aluminium and inside the carbon. That's just asking for fail safe. So put your own receiver in, mount the antennas properly. I'm probably going to be mounting mine out the back of the arms or something like that. Make sure you're not going to be getting any fail safes, because if this thing's going to go as fast, like on a 6S battery, it should be an absolute weapon, and this thing might disappear before you know it, especially if you get a fail safe. Now with all that said and done, all those pros, cons, designs, overviews, concepts, all that sort of stuff, I think definitely a step in the right direction. Furibee's absolutely killing it lately, and you can't complain too much when you look at like the 160, 170, whatever it is, and if it's in stock, that is, you can't really complain too much. So the biggest test, we're going to take it out to the field, fly it around, and see just how well we can get this thing working. Alrighty, so there it is. There's my part 1 review of the Fire Dancer from Furibee, and honestly, I'm pretty sure that someone at Furibee has some of the best people in the business. I don't know who's advising them, it's not me, but the stuff in here is absolutely fantastic. Furibee seems to be making just fantastic drones. They did their X215, they did the, what was that, the Dark Max, and now we've got the Fire Dancer. It's the best of the best so far, especially considering the price and what you get. Like as we went through, when we look at the components, the motors, the ESCs, the Betaflight flight controller, the VTX with that good connector on there, everything in here, on top of a Transtech Lightning frame for like that 160 price. absolutely ridiculous. Now look, the quality, there are a few things, like you want to make sure that the frame's tightened down a bit. I'm not sure about that pagoda part on the back and things like the receiver. Those are small things to fix, and then you can throw things in here like, oh, I don't like the Velcro strap. The cons on this thing versus the pros are very, very small. Now you might be saying, Stuart, well, why wasn't this your drone pick of the year? And honestly, when I first looked at this thing, I was blown away. And on paper, I was like, that, you know, like I'm talking to you guys now, it sounds absolutely incredible. But there are a few things I do want to mention. When you take it out and rip it around, I'm not sure how these motors are going to go. You will get a few little fail safes, especially with that other receiver that we had in here. So things like that, that's going to make it, if you're just whipping it out of the box, you want to fly it around straight away, you're not going to get that perfect flight experience. And that's really, really important for a first time drone, or for me, for my value drone pick of the year, because I'm expecting some beginner pilots to get this thing and then they can take it out, rip it around, and that's not going to be the case with this. I do think we're going to have to do a little bit of PID tuning, especially with these motors, you know, and I'm not really a fan of the props. And overall, look, I'm going to say this thing, absolutely amazing components in here. The frame, everything about it, hands down, is some of the best that I've seen, especially for the money. But if you're just wanting a drone you can take out of the box perfectly and it's going to fly, this isn't going to be the one. It's going to take a little bit of work, and that's why I didn't pick it for my drone of the year. Anyway, definitely stay tuned, because in part 2 we're going to take it out to the field, rip it around, we'll hand it over to Crash Test Cal. I'm going to put a GoPro on here, show you some HD footage, and then we're going to hit it with a speed gun. We'll hit it with a 2S, we'll hit it with a 4S, 5S, and even a 6S, because this thing, look, it can take huge voltages, so maybe this thing is going to absolutely break some records. And I might also do some PID tuning on it as well and see if we can get this thing flying like an absolute dream, because honestly, the components in here, it deserves to have a good rock around the field. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Definitely subscribe for more FPV related content. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss the part 2, because I'm pretty excited. I can't wait to see what it does, but you know, I am a little bit tentative on these motors and, you know, and the tune. I do think we're going to be a little bit unruly to start with, but hopefully we can iron some of those parts out. Also too, just a little bit of a reminder, thanks to everybody if you watched this entire review, because I know it went for a little bit longer, and don't forget, I'm giving one of these bad boys away, so make sure you read those official rules, put that comment in, all that sort of jazz. Anyway. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Definitely subscribe if you're new to the channel and check out these videos, and I'm also going to leave a little link here to my Patreon page, because I've got some fantastic Patreon supporters and I like to give back to them as well. So if you want to join the UAVfutures family, there's things like bonus Velcro straps, little bundles of FPV goodies and things like that that also get sent out. Anyway, happy flying.